Ross Coulthart saying that Lue Elizondo was actually part of the reverse engineering program and has also been part of an effort to persuade the way that this stuff really gets disclosed. And is he a disinformation agent? People have suggested that in the past. Well, I want to play this clip from Ross talking about Lue, and then we'll discuss what it all means afterwards. So check this one out.
It's pretty obvious, I'm not going to lie to you, that the gentleman that I've been talking about, whom I suspect might be up for a big position, is Lue Elizondo. And as you may have noticed in recent weeks, I have been quite delicately outspoken in my belief on previous Q&As that I think Lue needs to be more forthcoming about his past roles. And I like and respect Lue a lot. And I think he's in a difficult position because he's bound by his security oath about what he can reveal about his past roles. I know he can't talk about it. It's a ridiculous situation. But there are people who bitterly resent and don't think it's a good idea that Lue be appointed to a position of power in UAP transparency because they think that he was part of a previous agenda that was essentially to try to control the narrative, to restrict what the public is entitled to know about the UAP disclosure. And I think a lot of this was an intention by James Clapper, General James Clapper, to try and impose a narrative on the public domain using Lue as a frontman, a highly urbane, articulate and likeable frontman, to try to restrict what the public was told about crash retrievals. And it struck me over the years that I've been covering this issue that the story that we ran with David Grush really wrong-footed all of this. That all of a sudden, David comes out and says, hang on a moment, we're not just arguing here about whether there are aliens or not. What we're talking about here is a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, and I'm saying it's real, he says. And I think that did wrong foot that national security state attempt to try and provide a controlled disclosure. But I refuse to accept that the people like Lue Elizondo, who were part of that attempt at a controlled disclosure, were motivated by bad things. They're patriots. They love their country. And I've spoken to people in the legacy program who knew Lue. Lue, I know a lot of people, and they know you, and I know you can't speak about the role that you've held within the legacy program, but you did. And I think we've got to stop this nonsense because it's becoming destructive. There are factions and bitternesses beginning to develop within the UAP world, and I think it's in danger of blowing the whole thing apart.
I mean, it's definitely interesting, right? Because Lue Elizondo, I don't think it's been, it's already been something that's been discussed for quite a while, even when he came out with the book or other things. And I think Rogan kind of hinted, he never called out Lue Elizondo by name, but he always kind of hinted that it was Lue Elizondo that he was talking about, that when he said that there are some people that you don't always trust and it could seem like they're saying one thing, but they might be trying to throw disinformation. And again, he could be talking about someone else. I always read it that it could have been Lue, but Lue's always been accused of being a disinformation agent. And then even the one scientist who wound up being well, some people think she was killed off, and God, the anti-gravity scientist, and you guys are going to correct me on her name. When she did a video, she called out Lue Elizondo and Hal Puthoff. So he's never been a universally revered person. He's been accused of this type of stuff. So this isn't going to shock a lot of people that from what his position was in general of what he did, the timeline of it is what I'm thankful for. What Ross kind of breaks down here is that he was involved in a project, and maybe even when the 2017 thing maybe was indeed like even a push for him to do so. That's not what he's saying there, but maybe that's what it was, meaning the New York Times article with Leslie Kean and everything too, because he never really got in trouble for that, and he became kind of like a spokesperson for it. Now, Lue Elizondo probably pushed back and said I got in a lot of trouble for that, and I also, was if he's been on the record talking about how it's made it really difficult for him and his family and other things. But if it was indeed controlled, and what Ross Coulthart is saying, that there was a plan in place before David Grush came out to speak, that it would be very interesting that you had to change course and say, okay, well, now let's do this. But I happen to agree with Ross, though, and others, and Ross doesn't necessarily share the opinion, but what they say, I think that Lue might be compromised in a way that you shouldn't give him a position of this potential power. Not to say he couldn't be an advisor or anything else too, but I think Ross is correct in that you have to be more upfront and you have to be more forthcoming with the information of what was it that you did, what is it that you know, and there's other people who are able to speak and talk about things that he isn't able to, and he's always kind of quiet about it. Now, one of the things that could play into it is what Luna said last week about get him some clearance. If he said, well, I'm worried about what I can say and what I can't say, well, then get him some clearance. If he's going to be in this position of power, so let Lue Elizondo talk about the things that he can talk about. Let him talk about this stuff that people, because if he's up front and said, Lee, I actually did work on these programs and I did work on this and I can give more information about it. I wasn't able to do it in the past because of this, but now I'm going to be more upfront with everybody because I have been given the clearance to talk about these things. I think Ross is right. I think they would go a long way. I mean, it would go a really long way with a lot of people, even people who are critics of Lue Elizondo. But I think the problem is that if you try to portray this image that it's, oh no, I'm out there doing the right thing. I've been telling the truth since the beginning, and everything that I can say, I have. I think everybody knows that that's not true. And echoing what Ross says, it's because you're trying to follow the rules, and I agree that I don't know Lue. I've never spoken to Lue, but it seems that he's someone who loves his country, wants to do the right thing and be. But I think he's been part of the organization longer than he's actually been leading on to be. At least that's my thought on it. But there's tons of these people that the idea that this controlled disclosure has always been a plan. I think that goes back to even when Hal Puthoff was talking to, I think it was Rogan, when he was talking about the things that happened during the Bush administration. So these plans and conversations have happened, but they do it in a way that they think that A, the public wants to hear about it, and B, the things that they want to tell us. So it's people like Grush, like you've heard about it, even like when, I think it was Matt Brown was talking to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp about it, that like Dave Grush, that name was just like, it was like a bad word. Couldn't even bring it up around when he was working, because he threw off a lot of plans. And so he's still out there doing it again. And now, I say this and I stand by this. I still think Disclosure Day did a lot of good for opening the eyes of people who weren't into this topic beforehand. And not only if people saw the actual movie itself, but from the interviews on popular shows that people normally watch, it spread the word for sure and got more people talking about it in the mainstream media. And that was important. I still think Disclosure Day was very important, not the inside of the movie itself, because it didn't really turn out that a lot of the movie was more of a kind of fantasized film with some Easter eggs and things of that nature, but it got people talking in the way that I thought that it could, with PR and the lead up to the movie, and having Spielberg out there, a prominent figure like Spielberg, continue talking about it and being asked point blank if he thinks that this stuff has happened already, and his answers of yes and the belief. But I truly believe that the reverse of that is that if the Kaczynski movie, who directed Top Gun Maverick and it's the one with F1 or F1, I think, with Brad Pitt. He's supposed to be working on a movie with Grush, and Grush is supposed to be an advisor. Now, if that movie actually does happen, and that contains the type of story and elements that we thought that we could get with a Spielberg movie, well, then that could be the next wave of things too, especially if Grush is adding in a lot of these things that he has spoken about, whether it's on Capitol Hill, or at hearings, to Ross Coulthart, whatever it might be. That would be interesting to see where that moves forward, because you can use the Hollywood system as a vessel to get your stuff out there. Now, as far as Lue Elizondo goes, I mean, I don't really think there's a way forward without being honest about his past role. I think Ross Coulthart is 100% on this. I think that he's right. I think that if you're going to get this type of position with the amount of people going, I don't know if I can trust Lue, because there are a lot of people. I will say I am very appreciative to him of the things and the information, regardless if it was planned or not. The 2017 article changed a lot of stuff, and it was the first kind of open door to really get people in this new wave over the last, whatever it's been, 10 years, 11 years, getting more and more people discussing the topic. And he has done a lot, and he's been a spokesperson. And when he had his book, that was one of the things that was getting mainstream coverage. And when you get mainstream coverage, whatever it might be, it's helpful. Now, the question is, how controlled is that narrative? I think it's something that you should expose, and you should be upfront about whatever you could. And again, if you can get the clearance for it, the Luna's, because him and Luna have gone back and forth though too, at times about when Lue was supposed to show up, he was sick or not. I can't remember what the whole thing was. So it's the other thing is nobody's ever on the same page. I don't know, but good on Ross for this one. I've been critical. Like I said, there's a lot of things Ross Coulthart does that I'm on board with, and I applaud. There's a lot of times I think sometimes that I'm not a fan of some of the ways that he reports and other things, but this is not one of those times. I think this is accurate. I think this is a good thing to do, and I also think it's ballsy in the fact that he's one of the bigger names in this space, and it would be a topic that a lot of people will see and hear about. And he's basically saying that this guy was part of the legacy program. He knows he is. He's talked to enough people. He should be upfront about it. And he was part of controlled disclosure. So it's a big claim. And I even saw somebody say, why is this a big story? We kind of knew this already. And it's like, to the people inside of the community, sure, but imagine if you're brand new and you come into this topic and you learn about Lue Elizondo, and then this is the first time you're hearing, well, this guy might actually be part of the actual program that people are exposing. So I think it is a big story. But I ask you guys, what do you think? What do you think of Lue Elizondo? Should he be up front if he's going to get this position of power? Do you think he ever will be? Put your thoughts in there. Let me know. Thank you so much for being here. As always, make sure you click like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you, and we'll see you on the flip side.